When shouldn't you use free podcast hosting? In the last episode, I discussed the case for free podcast hosting. And on this episode, I'm going to talk about why you shouldn't use free podcast hosting, the case against free podcast hosting, but it's from a slightly different perspective. I'm always a fan of you getting started, so if you've not listened to the last episode, please go and check that out right now. This, of course, is the Podcast Accelerator, the thrice-weekly show from me, Mark Asquith, that British podcast guy and CEO and co-founder at Rebel Base Media, where we make all sorts of wonderful podcasting products, including the podcast host, Captivate.fm, that is making waves in the industry. According to Jason Sacco from the Ankylosing Spondylitis podcast, Captivate is the best podcast host that he has used, and he's used Podbean and Libsyn, but he's impressed by the support and what we give you all under one cost. So please go and check out Captivate.fm for free for 7 days at Captivate.fm. Now, podcast hosting. Oh dear. It's full of people that get really annoyed really quickly. You know me, I'm pretty loose. It takes a lot to annoy me. I don't get annoyed by people using free podcast hosting. I am not that guy. But a lot of people in podcast hosting really do get annoyed. But the problem with that is it makes you feel bad for using free podcast hosting. Like I said in the last episode, I would rather you got started for free and then realized, good Lord, I'm giving up a heck of a lot of either my content or my rights, or I'm not getting the right analytics, I'm not getting the support that I need, I'm very limited. But look, I've done 10 podcasts, I've done 10 episodes. I may as well just now look for something because I've done 10, I've got over the hump, I know I'm going to stick to it because I really like it. I would much rather you did that. Okay, so go and check out the last episode if you're wondering what I'm talking about. Before I dig into today's episode, I just want to give you a quick reminder that AWeber are still giving you 90 days to try their email marketing platform. I use it every single day to engage with my listeners. Now, here's the thing. If I don't tell my listeners via email that there's a new episode, my download numbers are significantly less because people expect a quick update. They expect just a quick nudge in their inbox. Hey, by the way, there's a new episode. Here's what I'm talking about. If it interests you, go and get it in these places. If you're not doing that, are you leaving downloads on the table? I don't know. Go and check it out anyway, all right? markasquith.com/AWeber. That's going to give you 90 days totally free. So, rightly or wrongly, people start their shows using free podcast hosting. And the reason is simple. It's free. But there comes a point, usually very quickly, when you should be moving from that free hosting to something that you control, own, and can scale with. Now, podcasting is about friction. Getting started with podcasting is about low friction. That's why Captivate is very easy. That's why when you land on a new screen on Captivate, every time, if you've never been to that screen, I'm going to pop up and tell you how to work that screen on the bottom corner. It's frictionless. It's easy. This is what a lot of people in podcast hosting do not get, is that the stuff that you were building in 2005 and then the stuff you built again in 2010, then that stuff you launched in 2014 that looks like it was built in 2010, actually looks like it was built in 20 maybe 2009, 2005, that stuff is not frictionless. It requires someone to actually care about podcast hosting. No one gives a crap about podcast hosting. It's really boring. It's just something that you need as a podcast host, all right? So the situation is that a lot of the podcast hosting platforms out there have not understood why free podcast hosting has taken a little bit of their business. And it's not always because it's free. It's often because it's a little bit frictionless. It's easier to do. That's why Captivate is easy. We know that people don't mind paying $19 a month for unlimited podcast hosting across multiple shows and all the features included. People don't mind paying that if it's easy. The last thing someone wants is to feel silly, to feel stupid, to feel like they can't do it. Especially when they've got to figure out how to plug a bloody microphone in and what to talk about. And what are these ID3 tags? What is iTunes? What's Apple Podcasts? An RSS feed? What the heck is that? They don't want to learn all of this stuff. But some of the podcast hosting companies out there, they want you to learn this stuff because, quote unquote, pure podcasting. Who cares? All right? You want to record your voice, get cracking. Okay? But, there will come a point where your brand will suffer, okay? As the second you start to publish something, the second you affect someone via their ears, the second you pipe something into someone's cranium, you affect them and you become a brand. And as a brand, you need as much control over your brand as possible. I would never put my blog on Medium because I would much rather prefer to own my blog. I would never build my main community on Facebook. I would never, ever do that. I would never host with a free podcast host because I want my content and I want to control my feed. I want to control my brand. I want analytics that matter to me. And this is the case against free podcast hosting. As soon as you get to episode 7, 8, 9, 10, you are going to struggle because you're going to get inquisitive, or you're going to get offers of sponsorship, or you're going to get people saying, where do I interact with you? Where do I do this? Where do I do that? And the problem is you can't do that with free podcast hosting, all right? You can't. And the thing is, if you aren't paying for something, the data that you give them is what you are investing, all right? That is it. That is it. If that company disappears, your data disappears. If that company suddenly decides to change its terms and allow full and exclusive rights to themselves, you don't really have that much choice, all right? Anchor got battered for that in the early days because they did that. Their terms are still a little questionable, but people signed up and then people moved, all right? So this is what you got to understand, all right? When you're creating, when you have a voice, that voice and that creation is yours. That intellectual property, that IP is yours. Why would you cede control of that to someone via a free hosting platform? Sure, get started with that, but the second you can, the second you feel like you want to start controlling that brand, and actually, the second you realize that podcasting is for you and you're going to continue doing it, that is when you should consider moving to somewhere like Captivate.fm. Now, like I said, this is not a sales episode. I'm not trying to sell you Captivate.fm. Captivate will sell itself, all right? Because it's easy. It's the easiest podcasting platform out there. It really is. We've been told that by people who are very difficult to impress, okay? What I want you to do is just consider, if you're using something like a free podcast host, just ask yourself, how much control am I giving up? Can I control my entire brand? Can I control everything? If not, get yourself over to a podcast host that actually wants to help you grow. So just check it out. Like I said, Captivate.fm. But if you're still using a free podcast host, don't feel bad about it. Just ask yourself those questions, and as and when the time is right, just start to think a little bit deeper about it, all right? Because free podcast hosting does have its place, but you give up so much control, and that is the case against free podcast hosting. Now, thank you so much for joining me. It's always a real pleasure to be doing this with you. I really appreciate you. Please tell your podcasting friends if they would benefit from this show that they can listen for free in any app that supports podcasts. Go and check out Captivate. And until the next time, thank you so much. And never forget, the more you expect from yourself, the more you will excel.